The rain started long before dawn, falling heavily on the rusted zinc roofs of Okaira community. The water dripped from corners, splashed into muddy puddles, and washed away the dust from the previous day. In a tiny one-room apartment behind the old market square, Emily woke up to the sound of thunder rumbling in the far distance. She turned on the dim lantern beside her mattress. The room was as small as a classroom locker, barely big enough for her bed, a tiny wooden table, and two plastic chairs. Emily had grown used to the hardship, but her heart still tightened every morning when she remembered why she was here. She was a poor maid. She worked in the mansion of the wealthy Adeyemi family as a full-time house help. She cooked, cleaned, washed clothes, and attended to every chore no one else wanted. The salary was small, but it was the only way she could support her younger sister, Charlotte, who was still in school. Emily stood up and tied her scarf neatly. Her face was gentle, her eyes soft and naturally hopeful, even on days when her heart felt tired. She had promised herself long ago that no matter how harsh the world became, she would remain kind. That was what kept her going. By 6 a.m., she had walked through the rain to the mansion, a wide, magnificent white building with a marble staircase and tall golden pillars. The security guard opened the gate without looking at her twice. Emily entered the compound quietly. She had no voice in this house. She was the maid, nothing more. Inside the mansion, she met Mrs. Olivia Adeyemi, the woman she worked for. Mrs. Olivia was a strong, intimidating woman with sharp eyes that noticed everything except people's feelings. She always spoke like she owned the whole world, and in many ways she did. "Emily," she called sharply the moment she entered. "You are late." "I'm sorry, Ma," Emily said softly. "It was raining, so—" "I don't want excuses. Now go inside and start with the laundry." "Yes, Ma." Emily hurried into the laundry room without another word. She had lived like this for 5 years, quiet, careful, always trying not to offend anyone. But today, something unusual was waiting for her, something she never imagined. That evening, Emily was sweeping the living room when she overheard Mr. and Mrs. Adeyemi arguing. She knew it was wrong to listen, but their voices were loud, and the conversation caught her attention immediately. Mrs. Olivia sounded frustrated. "What do you expect us to do? The elders said the tradition must be kept. The wedding must hold this week." Mr. Adeyemi sighed heavily. "But how can John marry a poor maid? It makes no sense." Emily froze. John, marriage, maid. Her hands trembled on the broom. Mrs. Olivia continued, "The priest said the misfortune following this family will only end when a humble, pure-hearted woman marries him. If not, tragedy will continue. Do you want to lose everything?" "So you want to force that girl to marry him?" Mr. Adeyemi asked quietly. "Yes," Mrs. Olivia said firmly. "She has no choice." Emily felt her heart drop. Could they be talking about me? She stepped backward slowly, her heartbeat loud in her ears. A sudden wave of fear washed over her. Why would they want her to marry someone? And who was John? She had never met him. Before she could react, Mrs. Olivia turned and saw her standing behind the wall. "Emily," she called in a low, commanding voice, "come here." Emily stepped forward, trembling. "We have something to tell you," Mrs. Olivia said sternly. "The elders have chosen you for a very important responsibility. You will marry our son, John, by the end of this week." Emily gasped. "What?" Ma, I don't understand." "You don't need to understand," Olivia said. "This is your destiny. You will marry him." "But Ma, I cannot just marry someone like that." "You will marry him," Olivia repeated, her eyes growing sharper, "or you and your sister will be thrown out of this compound and never find help here again." It felt like ice filled Emily's veins. Her sister, her only family, her fragile hope, her lips trembled. "Please, don't do this." "Then agree," Olivia ordered. Emily stared at her hands. Her heart felt like it was breaking, yet she knew she had no power. She was a maid, a powerless girl with no home, no parents, and no support. Finally, with tears gathering in her eyes, she whispered, "I agree." "That is better," Olivia said coldly and walked away. Emily stood alone in the large living room, feeling her world collapse around her. She knew nothing about this man she was being forced to marry. She didn't know his face, his personality, or even where he was. Was he cruel? Was he dangerous? Was he even alive? But the truth was far more shocking than she could ever imagine. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat on her mattress, hugging her pillow, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her mind raced with fear and confusion. Why must she marry a stranger? Why her? What exactly was happening to the Adeyemi family? While she cried quietly, far away in the abandoned area of Ketu, under the pedestrian bridge, a man sat alone on a broken wooden bench. His clothes were dirty, his beard was unshaved, his slippers were worn out and torn. People passing by assumed he was just another homeless man struggling to survive. His name was John, but unknown to everyone, unknown even to Emily, who feared his name. John was not an ordinary homeless man. He was a billionaire, one of the richest young men in the country. And he was in disguise. Only two people in the world knew the truth: himself and the private investigator watching him from a distance. John looked up at the night sky and whispered, "Just a few more days. I will know the truth about the people who betrayed me." Then he closed his eyes, and far away Emily lay awake, praying for strength. She didn't know her life was about to collide with his. She didn't know she was being forced to marry a homeless man, unaware he was the billionaire who would change her life forever. Morning broke over Lagos with a pale gold light that slipped through the thin curtains of Emily's small room in the servants' quarters. The chirping of distant birds mixed with the early hum of traffic on the Lekki-Ipe expressway. Emily lay awake, eyes open, heart thudding like a drum she could not silence. The words from last night still echoed in her mind, words she never thought would be said to a maid like her. "You will marry him," Madame Sarah had ordered, her voice cold and final. "If you do this, your mother's hospital bills will be paid. If you refuse, you will leave this house today." "Marry who?" Emily had whispered, her breath caught between fear and disbelief. "The homeless man, John." Emily squeezed her eyes shut now, as if darkness could undo a cruel morning. The memory of John's quiet eyes flickered in her mind, eyes that had looked wounded and proud the day she offered him warm rice behind the staff gate. He had thanked her with a low voice and walked away like a man who feared his own shadow. That same man, a stranger to her life and her dreams, had been called into Madame Sarah's sitting room last night and told to stand there while decisions were made over him like he was a folded cloth on a shelf. A soft knock came on her door. "Emily, open," whispered Ava, the youngest maid with a gentle face and restless hands. Emily rose and let her in. Ava slipped through the door with a bundle of folded fabric, an old ivory lace gown that once belonged to Jessica, the family's cousin. It smelled faintly of camphor and rose soap. "They asked me to bring this," Ava said, eyes down. "Madame Sarah wants you ready by 10. The pastor will be in the garden." Emily took the dress with trembling hands. "Ava, is there no other way?" Ava's eyes filled. "I asked Sophia and Mia. We all did. We begged Jessica to talk to Madame Sarah, but Madame said this is the only way to save your mother." "My mother," Emily breathed, the ache in her chest deepening. "She cannot even sit up. The medicine is finished." Ava nodded, and for a long moment both young women stood without speaking, two small candles of kindness flickering in a large, cold house. When Ava left, Emily dressed slowly. The lace scratched her skin, and the zipper caught at the waist where the seam had loosened. She tucked her natural hair into a soft bun and pinned a small veil borrowed from Charlotte, the cook, who declared with a firm voice and wet eyes that every bride deserved a veil, even if the ceremony felt like a storm. By 9:30, the mansion began to hum with a quiet, uneasy urgency. In the front living room, David and Michael, Madame Sarah's brothers, talked in hushed tones by the window. Kevin, the chief security officer, stood near the gate, his radio hissing with whispers from guards outside. Olivia and Isabella arranged rows of flowers in the garden beside the trimmed hedges. Abigail adjusted white chairs, while Jessica set a neat table with a small cake on a stand. A thin ribbon ran across the back of each chair, like a soft apology for a celebration no one truly wanted. Christopher, the family's lawyer, arrived in a navy suit. He carried a metal briefcase like a judge carried a final verdict. Behind him came Pastor Daniel in a gentle grey blazer, his Bible pressed to his chest. Ryan and Ethan, two men Emily had seen once at the company's year-end dinner, stood at a distance, sending worried glances at Michael as if this was a meeting, not a wedding. Emily walked out the back door toward the garden, her steps small, her breath careful. The morning smelled of damp grass and jasmine. She saw John then, standing under the almond tree. He wore a clean white shirt and a slightly oversized black jacket that someone had pressed and tried to tame. His hair was brushed, his shoes, though scuffed, had been wiped until they shone in patches. But it was his face that stopped her. The same calm, guarded face, the same quiet eyes. He looked at her as if he was afraid to look too long. Michael approached Emily with a thin smile. "Thank you for doing this," he said. "Your mother is at St. Mary's. The deposit has been paid. She will get the treatment." Emily swallowed. "Will she be okay?" Michael's eyes softened, and for a moment a true kindness passed through his gaze. "She has a chance. This gives her a chance." Madame Sarah swept out then, dressed in wine lace and gold earrings, her posture straight, her voice steady. Charlotte and Mia followed behind her. The garden fell quiet as Sarah reached the center and signaled to Pastor Daniel. "Let us begin," Pastor Daniel said softly. Emily and John stepped forward. She could feel the pulse at her neck, feel the lace press close to her ribs. Pastor Daniel spoke about love as choice and covenant. He spoke about seasons, dry and rainy, and about the mercy that holds people together when the wind is stronger than their will. Emily heard the words, but they felt far away, like bells in another church. Close to her, she felt only a sadness that tasted like salt and iron. "Do you, John, take Emily?" the pastor asked. John's voice was steady. "I do." "Do you, Emily, take John?" Emily looked at John, really looked. Beneath the borrowed jacket was a man who carried himself like someone accustomed to standing aside so others could pass. There was pride in his shoulders, but not arrogance, strength in his jaw, but not hardness. His hands were clean now, but she remembered the day she had seen him by the gate. His fingers cold and a tremor moving through them. As he held the warm container of rice she pressed into his palms. She thought of her mother, the soft hums she sang at night, the rough hands that had washed floors and clothes so Emily could go to school, the whispered prayers when medicines were too expensive. Emily's throat tightened. "I do," she said. The air seemed to pause. Somewhere a bird called. Pastor Daniel smiled and prayed. He asked for mercy over 2 young people and for a home that would be kinder than the path that led to this moment. "You may exchange rings," he said gently. Christopher opened the metal case. Inside were 2 simple bands, thin, gold, unassuming. As Emily slipped a ring onto John's finger, his hand trembled. When John took her hand, he held it carefully, as if it was made of glass. The warmth of his skin surprised her. His eyes lifted to meet hers, and in them she saw a storm she didn't understand and a softness she did not know how to hold. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Pastor Daniel said. "You may greet your bride." John did not lean in to lift her veil. He bowed his head instead, a small gesture of respect that felt old and true. Emily's eyes stung. Around them, hands clapped softly, as if applause might break something delicate. The ceremony ended with tea and small bites under the umbrellas. No music played. Olivia and Isabella passed plates with quiet care. Jessica cut the cake and placed a tiny slice on a white saucer for Emily, who could not eat. Abigail brought water. Ava stood beside Emily, holding her elbow when the new bride's knees wobbled. Madame Sarah approached with Christopher and the briefcase. "You will sign the marriage certificate and a temporary domestic agreement," Sarah said. "For your protection," she added, as if the word could hide the control beneath it. Emily signed where Christopher pointed. John signed too, his signature slow, letters carved with care. When it was done, Christopher clicked the briefcase shut with a sound that made Emily flinch. "Your mother's treatment has started," Michael said. "I just confirmed with David. The nurse, Charlotte, another Charlotte, will call you when she wakes." Tears rose to Emily's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Michael nodded and stepped back. The garden loosened as guests drifted toward the house. Only Emily and John remained under the almond tree, a soft shade folding around them. "I am sorry," John said at last, his voice low. "This is not how a person should marry." Emily swallowed. "It is not," she agreed. Then quieter, "But my mother, she is all I have." John's expression changed, some mix of pain and understanding. "I know what it means to be all someone has," he said. "I lost my father early. My mother raised me alone. She taught me to carry water without spilling it, even when the road is rough." Emily looked at him. "Where will we live?" "I was told there is a small room at the back house for now," John said. "I will make it kind if I can." A faint, unexpected heat warmed Emily's chest. Kind, such a small word, such a necessary one. They walked together, strangely shy, past the bright lawn and through a side path to the back house, where the air smelled of wood and something sweet. The room was small. 2 chairs, a narrow bed, a window that opened to a hibiscus bush. On the bed lay a folded blanket and a note from Charlotte. For your first night. May it be gentle, even if the day was not. John stood by the door, unsure of where to place his hands. I will sleep on the floor, he said quickly. Please, take the bed. We can share the space, Emily replied, her voice soft. We are married. They both fell silent, as if the word had startled them. Then John stepped aside and opened the window. Light spilled across the floor in warm squares. Emily, he said after a long while. Yes? I will work, John said. Whatever comes to my hands, I will do it. I do not want you to carry this alone. She nodded. Thank you. Just then, a phone buzzed, Ava's number flashing on the small screen Charlotte had given Emily that morning. Emily answered with a shaking hand. Emily, Ava said, breathless with relief, your mother is awake. She is asking for you. Emily's knees went weak. She put a hand to the wall and covered her mouth with the other as tears fell, clean and hot. John moved closer, not touching, but near enough that his presence steadied the air. Thank God, Emily whispered. Thank God. John's eyes shone. We will go, he said. Now. They left the small room together, crossed the yard, and stepped back into a day that still felt uncertain, but had opened, just a little, like a window to a softer wind. Neither of them knew the truth that walked beside them, that the man people called homeless had built an empire in secret, that the quiet eyes Emily trusted were watching over her in ways she could not imagine, that this forced wedding, harsh and sudden, would become the beginning of a love that would heal more than medical bills. For now, there was only the road to St. Mary's, a girl with a trembling smile, and a man who walked at her side like a promise he intended to keep. The road to St. Mary's Hospital was busy that afternoon, crowded with yellow buses, honking impatiently, and street vendors shouting prices through the windows. Emily held her veil in one hand so it wouldn't blow into her face, and John walked beside her with quiet determination. Though they shared only the silence between them, something gentle had begun forming in that silence. Something like comfort, thin but real. Inside the hospital, the air smelled of antiseptic and hope. Nurses hurried past with charts, the soft beeping of machines blended with whispered prayers from worried families. Emily's heart beat faster with every step they took toward the ward. When she pushed her mother's door open, the sight brought tears instantly. Her mother, frail, thin and pale, was sitting up, supported by pillows. Her face lit up when she saw Emily. My daughter, she whispered, her voice weak but warm. You came. Mama, Emily choked, rushing to her bedside. She held her mother's hand and kissed it, tears falling freely. You're awake. You're really awake. Her mother smiled faintly. God kept me. He kept me so I can see your face again. John stood respectfully at the door, head bowed slightly. Emily wiped her tears and beckoned him closer. Mama, this is John, she said softly. He is my husband. Her mother blinked slowly, surprise crossing her fragile features. Your husband? Emily nodded. She had rehearsed what she would say, but no words felt right. How could she explain a marriage chosen for her? A marriage built on necessity, not love. Still, her mother reached for John's hand. Thank you for staying beside my daughter, she whispered. Something shifted in John then, something deep and soft. He knelt beside her mother's bed and said quietly, I will protect her with everything I am. Emily's breath caught. Her chest warmed. She looked at John, truly looked, and saw a sincerity that startled her. It was the first time she wondered if this forced marriage might not be entirely a tragedy. After the visit, they stepped outside into the late afternoon breeze. Emily stood under the shade of a mango tree, watching cars pass by while trying to steady her heart. John approached her gently. Your mother is strong, he said. She will recover. I hope so, Emily whispered. I don't know what I would do without her. John nodded slowly. You won't lose her. Silence lingered, but it was no longer uncomfortable. Emily noticed John's hands, rough, strong hands of a man who had labored far more than he deserved. She wondered what had pushed him into homelessness, what story hid behind his calm face. But before she could ask, he said, "There is something I need to tell you. Soon. Not today, but soon." Emily felt a strange flutter of fear and curiosity. "Is it about your past?" He stepped back slightly, his eyes lowering. "Yes. And no." Before she could speak again, his phone rang. He pulled it out, a small, old phone with cracks on the screen. He stepped aside and answered quietly. Emily didn't try to listen until she heard a name. Christopher. Her heart tightened. Christopher was the family lawyer. Why was a homeless man receiving a call from a lawyer? John returned a moment later, his expression unreadable. "We need to go back to the house. Something has happened." "What?" Emily asked, anxiety rising in her chest. "They want to see us." Back at the mansion, tension simmered in the air. The living room was full. Olivia, Michael, Abigail, Jessica, Pastor Daniel, and Christopher all stood waiting like people preparing for a storm. Emily instinctively moved closer to John. "What is happening?" she asked quietly. Olivia stepped forward, her face unusually stiff. "Emily, you and John need to sit down." They obeyed, though a knot twisted in Emily's stomach. Michael cleared his throat. "We received a message today from one of the companies we invested in. Someone is trying to destroy our family, but not from outside." Olivia's eyes hardened. "It is someone within this house." The words struck the room like a stone thrown into still water. Emily blinked. I don't understand." Christopher opened a brown envelope. "Someone has been accessing family files, transferring money secretly, and making false transactions in the company accounts. We traced the login location." He paused. Jessica swallowed. "Where?" Christopher set the papers on the table. "The access came from the servants' quarters." A cold chill swept through Emily's body. "What does that mean?" she whispered. Olivia crossed her arms. "It means someone in the servants' quarters is a thief, and they are using this wedding to hide." Emily felt the air punch out of her lungs. She shook her head rapidly. No, none of the servants would do that. They are good people." "Someone did it," Olivia snapped, "and we will find out who." Jessica added gently, "We don't think it is you, Emily, but someone used the Wi-Fi router closest to your room." The implication hung heavily. John finally spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. "What do you want from us?" "We want you and Emily to move temporarily into the main house," Christopher said, "until we uncover the truth." Emily's mouth fell open. "But we just got married. We barely know each other." Olivia shrugged. "You're married, so begin your life together. And stay where we can watch the situation." John stiffened slightly, but he nodded. "If that is what you want." Emily stood up, fear and confusion swirling inside her. "What about my belongings?" "They will be moved," Abigail said softly. As the meeting ended, Emily and John were led to a new room in the main house, far bigger, with polished floors and soft curtains. A queen-sized bed stood in the middle, its thick blankets neatly arranged. Emily stood at the doorway for a long time. John watched her quietly. "Are you afraid?" She nodded once. "Very." He stepped closer. "Emily, you don't know me yet, and I don't know how to make your fear disappear. But I swear, I will not let anyone harm you." Her breath trembled. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He looked away, his voice a whisper. "Because I know what it feels like to be blamed for a crime you didn't commit." Emily's eyes widened. She turned fully toward him. "John, what happened to you?" He hesitated, long enough for her to feel the weight of a secret pressing against him. Then he said, "The truth is coming soon, Emily, and when it arrives, it will change everything." Before she could ask more, Olivia burst into the room. "Emily, John, come downstairs immediately." Both startled, they rushed down. In the living room, the television was on, breaking news flashing. A reporter's voice rang out, "Breaking, billionaire CEO of Crystal Tech, John Adderwell, is still missing after a year. His company suffers major losses as board members scramble to explain his disappearance." Emily froze. Her heart stopped. Her breath vanished. And slowly, she turned to look at her husband. John stood rooted to the floor, his face pale, his eyes unblinking, his entire body trembling. The picture on the screen was him. Her homeless husband, her forced groom, was the missing billionaire. Everything shattered, everything changed, and nothing in Emily's life would ever be the same again. Emily could not feel her legs. The living room seemed to tilt sideways as the news reporter's voice echoed again. Billionaire CEO of Crystal Tech, John Adderwale, remains missing. Sources say board members fear foul play. The world blurred. The only thing she saw clearly was the television screen. John's clean, confident face, John in a tailored navy blue suit, John shaking hands with business partners, John at an award ceremony receiving Young Tech Icon of the Year. Her heart hammered violently. She turned, slowly, painfully, toward the man standing beside her. The man she had married that morning. The man she believed was homeless. The man she had feared, pitied, and admired. He looked like a ghost now, frozen, breath caught, eyes wide with the kind of fear only someone running from the past could understand. "John," Emily whispered, barely able to breathe, Is that you?" The room fell silent. Everyone stared. Olivia's eyes widened. Michael stumbled backward. Abigail put a hand over her mouth. Pastor Daniel whispered a prayer under his breath. Finally, John closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "Yes, Emily, that is me." A slow gasp swept around the room. Emily stepped back until her hand hit the edge of a couch. Her knees shook. Her chest tightened. It felt like betrayal, like shock, like a truth too heavy to carry. "What? Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. John swallowed. "I wanted to. I tried. But the timing. Emily's voice rose, trembling. "I married a stranger today, a man I thought was homeless, a man I pitied, a man I wanted to protect." Her throat tightened painfully. "And all this time, you were a billionaire?" John's eyes shone with guilt. "Yes." Emily's head spun. "Why were you on the streets? Why did you look so broken? Why didn't you come home?" John ran a shaky hand through his hair. He turned toward the TV, then back to her. "Because someone tried to kill me." The words hit the room like a stone smashing through glass. Emily blinked. "Kill you?" John nodded. Michael stepped forward. "What are you talking about? John Adderwale went missing last year. Every news station reported it. They said your private jet went off the radar." John shook his head. "That was a lie. A story the real criminals crafted." "Who?" Olivia demanded. John's jaw clenched. His hands trembled slightly. Emily noticed it immediately. "A member of my board," he said. "Someone I trusted. Someone who wanted to take everything from me." He pointed to the TV. A scroll of suspects rolled across the screen. "That man," John whispered. Emily looked. Her heart dropped. Standing on the screen was a man giving a press conference, pretending to be sad. Christopher Benson. The same Christopher who had been acting like a family ally. Emily gasped. "Christopher, our lawyer." John nodded. "He wasn't your lawyer. He was mine, and he wanted my company. He arranged a fake helicopter malfunction. I escaped before it exploded, but I was badly injured." Emily covered her mouth. "Oh my God." "I woke up in a small clinic in Ikorodu," John continued. "No ID, no money, no phone. My board had declared me dead. They took everything." His voice shook. "And when I tried to return, someone tried again. So I hid. I disguised myself and stayed close to this house because Christopher had links with your employers. I needed proof. I needed a place to watch. That's when Emily found me with food." His eyes softened painfully. "You were the first person in a long time who looked at me like a human being." Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. John continued, "When I saw the wedding happening, when I learned someone framed your mother's bill to pressure you, I realized something bigger was happening. Someone wanted to control this house too." Olivia raised her voice. "Watch your words." John held up a hand. "I have evidence." Everyone froze. He pulled something small from his pocket, a flash drive. "I recorded every conversation I heard while living behind the compound. Christopher has been using someone here for months, someone in the servants' quarters, someone who was stealing documents and sending them to him." Emily's throat tightened. "Who?" John looked straight at the staircase. Soft footsteps echoed. Someone was hiding behind the curtains. A shadow, a sob. Charlotte, the cook, stepped out slowly, her eyes wet, hands shaking. "No, no, this is not happening," Emily whispered, heart breaking. Charlotte broke into tears. "I'm sorry, I didn't have a choice. Christopher promised to pay my father's hospital bills. He said if I didn't send the files, he would let my father die. Emily's heart cracked. Charlotte, sweet, kind Charlotte, had been manipulated. Michael covered his face with his hands. Olivia let out a long exhale. Pastor Daniel bowed his head in grief. I didn't want to hurt anyone, Charlotte cried, but Christopher threatened me. He said if I refused, he would expose me and send me to prison. I didn't know he was capable of murder. John walked to her slowly, not in anger, but with surprising gentleness. You made mistakes, he said. But you were desperate. Christopher preyed on that. Charlotte sobbed harder. Please forgive me. Emily ran to her and hugged her tightly. I'm not angry. I'm hurt. But I'm not angry. John turned to Olivia. You need to call the police. Christopher will come here next. He knows the wedding happened. He knows I'm alive now. A cold fear swept over the room. Jessica whispered, he could be watching already. John stepped toward Emily and took her hands gently. I'm sorry you married me without knowing the truth. I never wanted to deceive you. I wanted to keep you safe. Emily looked up at him, tears welling. And what about now? John exhaled slowly. Now. I want to protect you, not because of the wedding or the tradition, but because you were the only person who ever gave me kindness when I had nothing. Emily's lips parted, her heart softened. Her tears fell again, this time not from shock, but from something warmer. But before she could speak, the front gate slammed loudly. Everyone froze. A voice echoed outside, a deep, cold, angry voice. Open the gate now. Michael ran to the window, his face drained of color. It's him, he whispered. Christopher Benson. Emily's heart stopped. John moved in front of her instinctively. Emily, he whispered, no matter what happens next, don't let go of my hand. She clutched his fingers tightly. The front door handle rattled. A shadow darkened the windows. Christopher had come, and the truth John had been hiding was about to explode into the open. The front door shook violently as Christopher Benson's voice thundered through the compound. Open this door immediately. Emily clutched John's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Olivia moved backward, eyes wide with fear. Michael whispered for everyone to stay calm. But his trembling hands betrayed him. John stepped in front of Emily. Stay behind me, he said quietly. He no longer looked like the homeless man Emily married. He no longer looked afraid. He looked like a man reclaiming his life. The door burst open. Christopher Benson stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, and furious. Two men dressed in black suits flanked him like shadows ready to strike. His eyes locked on John instantly. So, you're alive. John didn't move. I am. Christopher's lips curved into a twisted smile. You were supposed to die a long time ago, John. What exactly kept you breathing? Stubbornness or stupidity? Silence hung in the air. Emily stepped closer to John, her heart pounding. She could feel the heat of his anger, but she also saw something else in his eyes, calm control. Christopher, John said evenly, it's over. I have every recording, every transfer, every document you forged. Christopher laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. You think anyone will believe a man who lived as a beggar for months? You think your little wedding changes anything? His eyes drifted to Emily. And you, pretty maid, did you think marrying a homeless man would save your mother's life? Pathetic. Emily's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. Before she could speak, John stepped forward sharply. Don't talk to my wife. The room froze. Emily's breath caught. Wife. He said it with a certainty that wrapped around her like protection. Christopher's smile faded. You think this protects her? You think this protects any of you? He snapped his fingers. The two men behind him stepped forward, but before they could move another inch, a voice sliced through the tension. Stand where you are. The front gate swung open again. A group of uniformed officers rushed in, EFCC agents, police officers, and two men in plain clothes wearing tactical vests. Their badges glimmered. Christopher's eyes widened. What is this? Michael stepped forward, lifting his phone. I called them the moment you started shouting at the gate. Olivia added, voice steadier now, and John sent them all the evidence before coming here. Everything shifted instantly. The two men behind Christopher raised their hands slowly. The officers restrained them. Christopher stepped back, rage twisting his face. You think you've won, he spat. You think this ends here? This is my company now. I have the board. No, a calm voice interrupted from behind the officers. Emily gasped when she saw him. It was Daniel Chukwu, the former chairman of Crystal Tech, the man who had resigned when John disappeared. His white hair and sharp eyes brought authority into the room like a quiet storm. "I have returned," he said, "and the board has voted." Christopher paled. "No, no, that's impossible. I control the board." Daniel Chukwu stepped closer, holding a document. "Not anymore. Once evidence of your financial crimes reached us, the board voted unanimously to remove you." He held out the paper. "This is your official termination. You are no longer welcome anywhere near Crystal Tech or any of its properties." Christopher lunged, but 3 officers tackled him instantly. He fell to the ground, cuffed, screaming curses that echoed around the marble walls. "You will regret this, John. I swear you will regret—" His voice was drowned out as he was dragged out of the house, kicking wildly. Silence followed, a deep, heavy silence that felt like the first breath after drowning. Emily trembled. John turned to her immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, cupping her shoulders. She nodded weakly. "Yes, I think so." He pulled her into a gentle embrace. She felt his heartbeat, strong, steady, real. "You don't ever have to fear him again," he whispered. Emily closed her eyes, for the first time since the wedding. She believed it. The following morning, the compound buzzed with hope instead of fear. Officers had left, reporters were kept behind the gates, and life slowly began to settle again. John walked out to the garden with Emily by his side. The sun was soft and warm, casting golden light across the flowers. Abigail, Jessica, and Ava were waiting, smiling with relief. "Oh, Emily," Ava cried, hugging her, "we thought we would never see peace again." Emily laughed softly, something she hadn't done freely in days. "I thought so too." John stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I want to speak to everyone." They all gathered. John took Emily's hand gently. "There is something I must say today, clearly, openly, and truthfully." Emily's heart fluttered. He faced everyone. "When I agreed to the wedding, I was broken. I had no identity, no wealth, no home, and no certainty I would survive the men hunting me. I expected nothing from this marriage except shelter and safety." He looked at Emily then. "But Emily, you gave me kindness when you thought I had nothing. You gave me dignity. And when the world called me a ghost, you made me feel human." Emily's eyes filled with tears. John knelt suddenly, right there, in the garden where everything began. "Emily," he whispered, voice trembling with sincerity, "I may have married you as a stranger, but I want to love you as a husband. Not because of the wedding, or the tradition, or the threats around us, but because you are the best thing that has ever happened to me." Emily's tears fell freely. Olivia gasped softly. Abigail covered her mouth. Jessica clasped her hands over her heart. John opened a small box. Inside was a delicate gold ring, simple, beautiful, filled with meaning. "Please stay with me," John said, "not as the poor maid forced into a marriage, not as a woman who had no choice, but as the woman my heart chooses freely." Emily couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She could only feel the pure sincerity of the man kneeling before her. "Yes," she whispered, voice breaking. "Yes, John, I want to stay. I want this. I want us." The garden erupted in soft applause. John rose and lifted her into a warm embrace, one that erased every fear, every doubt, every pain. He kissed her forehead gently. "You're safe now," he murmured. "With me, you're safe forever." Emily smiled against his chest, tears warming her face. She had entered this house as a poor maid. She had been forced into a marriage she didn't choose. She had stood beside a man she believed had nothing. But now, she had found love. She had found safety. She had found a man who would give her the world, not because she begged for it, but because she deserved it. John Adewale held her hand tightly. Emily Ademola held his even tighter. They walked back toward the mansion together. Not as strangers, not as a broken bride and a wounded groom, but as 2 souls who survived danger, betrayal, secrets, and fear. And found something stronger on the other side, a love that destiny itself had written. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you like the story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.